of all these case studies that I've read, like what makes these businesses and these brands successful is a very true understanding of culture and having company buy-in to that culture. Like that's what attracts, whether it was the IKEA story or the Four Seasons story or the Home Depot story or the Walmart story, like what made these brands great is that there was a higher order purpose that the employees could buy into.
Yeah.
Trader Joe's, like these great brands that transcend decades and like we all understand instantly that it's a great brand is because of their culture. And it's easy to say you have principles, but if you don't work through what they actually are and you don't identify them, it's words without meaning.
What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand. Say it again now. What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand.
Back in the studio since being in the desert.
Yeah,
Let's get this party started.
Well, we have a new framework.
We do.
So we're going to be testing out a new framework. Would love your guys' feedback on if you like this or if you have constructive feedback for improvement. We're also going to be adding a brand audit to every podcast. So I'm going to be creating a form that will be in my link in bio, the Camille-more.com, and you can fill out your information and submit your brand. And we'll be doing one of these per week. And then we're also going to be trying to do some lives once or twice per month. So look out for that information.
People love the live audits of other people's brands. And
That's people's favorite thing.
And we thought since there's so many loyal people who follow us, if they want to submit it, we'll put the brand up and then we'll give you a live audit on what's working, what's not working. And you can get feedback from people and it's a great way to grow.
Yeah.
And people enjoy seeing it.
So look out for that. So let us get into it. I think we should start with an Oman recap. We were in the Middle East. We were in a really, really cool country called Oman.
Which most people don't really know about.
Yeah, it's definitely up and coming. If you're looking for an interesting vacation that becomes a very cool party topic, Oman should be top of your list.
Expensive as heck, though.
Yeah, so it's got like the third highest currency in the world or strongest currency in the world. Super safe country.
Yeah.
Really, really beautiful and interesting place because it's on the tip of that horn in the Middle East, kind of where Saudi Arabia is.
Yeah.
But it's right on the edge of the water. So you get like beautiful beaches. The water was really warm, beautiful wildlife. We saw like live turtles.
Flying fish.
It was
sharks.
really, really beautiful. But we actually had a really interesting brand moment. And so I had booked the first hotel in Muscat, their capital, the Shangri-La, based off of an influencer, a travel influencer that I follow, and her name is Salty Lux, and she's a great account for kind of like doing things different, like not super luxurious high end, but like definitely not low end. But I really like how she approaches doing traveling because it's kind of like on brand for us. Like it's unique, interesting, but like well executed. So Oman was one of her travel recommendations, and that's why we booked it. But she had gone to the Shangri-La, and I quite like a nice hotel. And I ended up booking the Shangri-La, but I booked the wrong one.
Yes. The problem being is that one, from our branding perspective, wouldn't think that there would be different tiers of Shangri-La because we're fans of the Four Seasons and we just kind of assumed Shangri-La was like the Four Seasons, right? And I think when you were booking it, this one amazing property in Muscat has three kind of tiers of hotel on one thing. And because the price was high, you booked this one place that was really a family resort.
It was literally horrible. It was like, it was run down. It's like...
It wasn't horrible. It wasn't what we expected from the
It's horrible for what we paid.
Yeah, but it wasn't, it was a nice hotel.
I feel like that is actually accurate language because if you are booking a 5-star hotel and you have brand reputation of being known as a top end and it's not top end, you can use dramatic language because you're supposed to be at the top. So if it's not at the top, it's bad. You know what I mean?
So just to frame it out for people, it's one of the most beautiful properties you can imagine.
Seriously, it's a Four Seasons land.
It could be a Four Seasons or it could be on White Lotus. That's beautiful. But they have 3 hotels there. And they have the high-end one. They have a medium one that's great for weddings. And then they have a family one. But they're all under the Shangri-La brand, which is what confused us. And you booked us into the family child hotel, which was fine. Kind of.
No, it was honestly, judge me judge me if you need to judge me. But I really realized why I can justify what great execution without it being like over the top or if it not being like all the time. But when you get one vacation a year, it was not restful to be at that property with like so many kids, so much, like it was just that was why I'm being a bit maybe dramatic in the explanation, because the difference of like how my soul was at rest between the higher end, like there was like they didn't overbook, felt like nobody was there. It was like very like it was just a complete difference. Like it's apples to oranges and it's all under the same name. But
it was a bit of brand malpractice because the Shangri-La just seemed to be arrogant and they thought that they could just kind of carry three things and put families there, Indian weddings in the middle one, and then have their elite one, but they didn't differentiate.
No, and
it caused us to like think a lot less of the brand when we went into the Shangri-La. And I'll let you get into it, but the moment for me is when we went to dinner that first night, and it was Mexican night, and they brought not that these guys weren't trying hard, but it was a Pakistani band dressed as Mexicans, so they culturally appropriated Mexicans, and they were singing Spanish music with a very clear Pakistani accent. And
hilarious.
We had kids running around us, and you can just imagine we just flew like 15 hours to get here to like relax. So we've got kids running around us and a Pakistani Mexican band. And we're like, this doesn't seem to be what we booked here.
I really felt duped by an influencer. Like I actually felt betrayed by her, and
you were gonna yell at Salty Lux.
I was gonna give her a piece of my mind. I'm kidding, but what was really interesting though about this is that it really underscores what Rory Sutherland says, that a brand is the absence of anxiety. Because now I have anxiety towards the brand of Shangri-La. Like now, even though we fixed it, and where the story goes is that Philip. So my whole thing is like I actually black out when I see an instruction manual. Like if there's any like steps to follow, like I just can't do it. Like it's not the greatest strength of mine. But Philip is really good at like from his military background. He always makes sure like he understands where the exit is. Like he studies the maps, and he saw the map-based property that there was this like sunset beach on this third property, which by the way, when we checked in at 3:30 in the morning, and it seemed like we were like literally checking into Chuck E. Cheese in the Middle East. The front desk guy did a really bad job of explaining the three properties because we were under kind of already like, this doesn't feel right. Like, can we change? And it was really poorly explained to us. But anyways, we had walked over to this property because of Philip. And when we got to the property, it was like seeing a sunset. Like my soul was just like, here we are. I can rest. I made it. We had to check in that day, and it ended up being like literally a $25 price difference, or like a $50.
It was about $100.
It was like taxes and stuff though. But like in the initial when they quoted us, it was like a stupid amount of money that I was like, okay, let's just go right now. But what was really interesting for that point on the absence of anxiety is like I went through all of the steps of like, where did I go wrong, right? Like I was blaming myself as a consumer, and I was annoyed because when I was booking, literally halfway across the world, all you have to go off of is social media and the website. And the problem with these corporate brands is that all of their socials are like high fidelity photo shoots. So the family cheaper one doesn't look that different from the high-end, really nice one down the road, because it's probably the same photo team coming in for a whole week and like 2 days at one property, 2 days at the next. And the property of the family property, every single photo isn't like, this is only for families. Like they're also showcasing for the adults and for the parents. Like they've got a daycare, right? So like they're showing shots of like the parents at dinner alone, because the parents at dinner alone with kids like still want to go for dinner alone because they have like a daycare service. So my point is that when the socials are done from a high fidelity standpoint, it's very hard to get those steps for verification, because like the website really looked the exact same, and the only difference was price point, but the price point wasn't big. It was like $100 because I did this a year in advance. So when I was comparing between the properties and it was $100, there's many times. I feel like there's more times that I'm faced with bigger companies actually not pricing where they should price differently, and you feel ripped off because like, especially like with airlines and with hotels, you know, like it's $100 price difference because what, you're like looking at the river instead of looking at the pool. Like there's just, I feel like you're constantly faced in this like travel and hospitality of not knowing value for price point, and you go off of like those visual cues and they weren't there. And so where the story goes is that I ended up doing a video, kind of like an iPhone video explaining this, but really through the lens of promoting the other property of like, this was my experience. This is why this is a brand problem, because there's so many business owners who aren't focused on what is the customer seeing, what is the customer experiencing. Like, because you're so in the weeds, you're forgetting how and why it's important to look from an outside perspective. So the whole point of that video was like, this is a brand issue for them, but this is such a fantastic problem that property that it's worth them fixing. Mm-hmm. And we ended up getting to sit down with the general manager, and it was really interesting. And I think there's a lot that brands can learn. So you did a video.
We kind of went into a restricted area that was gorgeous, and you did a video saying, look, I'm sitting at one of the most beautiful properties I've ever seen. But we almost missed it because we were down the road at this other place that had been branded Shangri-La, and nobody told us about the difference. And you were trying to be helpful, and then when you posted it, the general manager got wind of it, and then they wanted to meet us. And so he comes and sits down with Camille Moore, the CEO killer. Let's see what happened.
And he's like, you know, there's other mediums. There's other ways that you could have done this. Meaning I could have come and told the general manager instead of creating content. Well, sorry, buddy. We now live in a world where people are giving their feedback in live time on social media. But it also wasn't negative feedback. In fact, I had more people be like, oh my gosh, I'm totally booking here. This is amazing. The price point is crazy. What an interesting video, because nobody cares about like just pure celebratory videos. There needs to be that element of controversy. Yeah. There needs to be an element of like, this is worth my time to watch the video, which is what I said to him. Like,
and this is kind of a problem in business and some marketing channels is you get people who get annoyed that you're not doing things the way you want them to do it, and they're your customer.
Yeah.
Right? So in the new world where people come and take videos of where they're staying, you can't get annoyed if people do a review on their digital platforms. You have to understand that's going to happen and plan accordingly. But you could sense this frustration that it was done that way as opposed to a customer comment card, which...
But this is where it actually becomes really interesting because his whole approach and mentality is like, oh yeah, you know, what you're saying is like so normal, but it's really your fault. You know, like you're an idiot. Like, and I'm so glad you found us. And this happens at such a frequent rate that we're shuttling people over and changing them, you know, 3 times a day from the other 2 properties. And you so astutely was like, well, can't you realize like that's a problem?
If you're moving people every couple of days because they booked in the wrong hotel. And it's kind of it's a mindset shift that people can look at. When you have a customer come to you with a problem, your goal is not to convince the customer that they're wrong. You really should be asking 3 to 4 level deep questions about what the customer experienced. And this was kind of like, hey, thank you for doing that thing. You could have done it somewhere else. It's really not a big problem because we just moved people over here. And then they're happy. And you're like, well, it's not fun to move your hotel.
No.
When you're in the middle of your vacation, we felt like we lost 2 days. And then he's like, you know, it actually happens all the time. And we're like, your UI, UX experience isn't perfect if this is happening.
No, your messaging, your positioning, your visuals, like what it's telling people is wrong.
And you can't respond to the inputs from your business that if you're moving people every 2 days, you need to go to your marketing team and say, we are not clear.
But that's actually the problem, though, of like once businesses get big enough or established enough. And it's actually a really good core takeaway for wherever you are in your business, because when you've been doing stuff long enough, you're not questioning on where you can improve. And I'm listening right now to Sam Walton's book, the founder of Walmart. And one of my favorite takeaways from the book so far is he's like, we were just so obsessed on taking whatever we could, the best of whatever we could from other businesses. He goes, I didn't care about where they could improve or like what they were doing wrong. I only cared about what they were doing well, because I could always take what they were doing well to adapt to our framework and to our business model. And in having this conversation with this general manager, he was just like, it's totally fine to have 3 different tiers within like a luxury brand. It's totally fine that property is 25 years outdated and this property is gorgeous for adults. And I'm trying to explain to him like, no, like there's a standard when I go to the Ritz-Carlton. There's a standard when I go to the Four Seasons. Like, what are you losing? Like, what is the opportunity cost of you thinking in this way, especially when you watched the video, like you went to my page, like you're sitting in front of people that you would have to pay a lot of money to get their expertise. And I'm trying to communicate to you how you can learn because I'm now having a great time. And he's not wanting to improve. And it's interesting because business owners can grow frustrated when it's too late and it costs too much money to fix a problem that could have been addressed sooner. And that's really the takeaway from this is it becomes very complicated because if they lose us as a customer, and they almost did, right? And the question is, I now have anxiety around their brand. What if I'm faced with choosing them and someone else and I'm going to Singapore? Am I picking them? And I don't know if I can say yes, even though that experience was great. But when this happens en masse, and the brand is not focused on fixing it as it's coming up, it costs way too much money and time to fix it when the problem is realized, because you've now had too big of a departure from where your brand once was. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. And that's why the Shangri-La, I hope, receives this. And I hope that your business can learn from this and that's also the problem with having employees join.
Whether you're a small business or a large business, I think most founders need to be reminded to really pay attention to customer feedback, right? Like really, because the feedback we were giving them was high level, and I hope Shangri-La headquarters gets that. That property is spectacular.
It really is.
There just needs to be only one Shangri-La, which is the one on the corner, right? And then you just rename the other ones. And maybe, I think somebody thought, we'll just keep them all Shangri-La, but it hurts the brand, right? It just has to be like the coolest family resort.
Well, especially when it's Shangri-La Al Waha, Shangri-La Al Busan, and then Shangri-La Al Husan.
Yeah.
It's not like Shangri-La Plus.
And so what I would do if I was, coaching a leader in that position, I put something up the chain of command saying we need to be much clearer on our website booking.
Yeah.
The roles that each of these properties are, and maybe consider different sub-brands to protect the Shangri-La brand.
Yeah.
And when you book, it should just be so clear. But anyhow, it was odd because he was friendly. He gave us like a nice thing. That hotel is gorgeous. He's running a great hotel.
He was running a great hotel.
Right? However, the response is just an interesting thing for people to think about.
And the other staff that worked at the hotel were amazing. We met many of the food and beverage managers that were great. They gave us like cocktails at sunset. Like they really did do a good job.
And what we're going to do at a following podcast, we made a great friend there named Haitham, and I hope that he's listening to us. He was a tour guide, and he captures the culture of that country, which is so friendly, clean, and respectful.
Oh, just such a good guy. If anyone wants to go to Oman after our content, send me a note. I'm going to give you Haitham's phone number because he's just so incredible, so trustworthy. He's a cab driver that also does like tours, but really made the experience fantastic.
It was amazing. Like sitting down and eating with him after our tour. But I just love seeing you as well. Camille is always building content creators. So Camille spent a lot of her vacation time helping this guy get a Viator account up, doing some videos of him. And I'd love to, at the next podcast, try to invite him in remotely just to say hello to Haitham on the podcast.
We should. Well, we'd have to start early, though, because of the time difference. But that would be worth it. I mean, Haitham is so, so sweet. I think you would love that. Let's do it.
Because that guy had language issues. He was nervous, but he so cared about meeting good people, and he really loved his job that when he said do a video.
Oh my God, this is the best part.
So you tell the story. It's
so Haitham,
we're gonna put this clip in the podcast.
It was so cute. So Haitham has been editing on his phone. He also called himself a photographer, a Snapchat photographer, because he takes all his photos on Snapchat. And we were talking about how he needs to create content for being like Oman's #1 tour guide, because Oman doesn't really have a ton of like Western tourists that are like posting and talking, and he can speak English. And so I was like, I had my mics with me and we made sure that we did a video. And the first time he did it, he was like so nervous and he was like sheepish. And
my name is Haitham. I am a tour guide in Oman. Please come to me.
And I was like, no, Haitham. You gotta like give me your pizzazz, give me your zest. I want to meet you. I want to get to know you.
You're the best tour guide.
And you're the best tour guide. And the second video is just so cool.
But he's in that full white outfit. What I loved about Oman is that religious country, but not judgmental.
Yeah.
And women could do, but they wear these beautiful white clothing almost from head to toe, and they keep them so clean in the desert.
They're so clean.
Right. And when you you told him to go second try.
He's just like, hello, I am Haitham. And he was like, he was living, and it was amazing because it shows you that we are our biggest roadblock. You know, like we hold ourselves back. And when you watch this video, like you just smile and you just love him and nobody's judging him and no one's going to judge you. And that's why, like, get over yourself. If Haitham can do it, you can do it. So that is the move. But quickly on your point on the Oman dress before we move on, one of the things I also love most about Oman is, and learning about that part of the world and the culture, there's just such a contract to the way the women dress and the way the men dress, right? And growing up here and, you know, meeting women in abayas or in burqas, you know, it's more confusing when you don't see it or you don't get it, especially when like a lot of the men westernize. But it was cool to see that the men kind of have their uniform, like their dress, because it's very uniform. Like they all wear these white, long, very clean. They're like perfectly pressed, like they're crisp on the side with their beautiful embroidered hats. And then the women have their, you know, their uniform, their dress, and it's the black abaya. And it's cool that they both.
They also had the Omani dresses too, like that were gorgeous. You bought one and wore it in the mosque, which I think they really liked. All right, Oman, great place to visit.
Recommend.
If you go there, contact Haitham. He's a great human being.
And go to Shangri-La Al Hussan.
Yes,
please.
Spectacular.
Awesome. Next is branding celebrity of the week. So the celebrity of the week, from a branding perspective, I'm voting Julia Fox. Julia Fox is a kind of like an internet personality. She's kind of been having her moment the last few years. If you don't know who Julia Fox is, she originally was like a dominatrix in New York City.
Sounds like a character from the show Billions, but
literally, obviously met some influential people, I guess, in her line of work, and then became an actress because she wanted to get into acting, and then dated Kanye West. It was kind of like the first person he dated kind of after Kim Kardashian, so it was kind of like a moment. And she's kind of become seen as like this avant-garde kind of like sexualized image that like pushes the boundaries on fashion, on she's kind of seen as like a muse, a very avant-garde character. And anyways, she did a campaign this week with MAC, and the campaign was really interesting. Effectively, she was just fully naked on the subway, like fully packed subway in the morning when like everybody's going to work with full-blown makeup. And the way that the campaign went online is like her, you know, her private parts were covered up, and it was like basically like I only wear MAC. So the whole concept is that like the only thing she's wearing is MAC, but it's like the new nude lipstick. So it's like she's in the nude because she only wears MAC. So the idea is that this was this really like avant-garde kind of shocking campaign for MAC, which is like MAC really pushing its boundaries. We haven't really seen MAC to be a boundary pusher in the last few years. I mean, it was a really iconic brand. It was the lipstick brand in the late 90s, early 2000s.
It started off very on the edge, like cutting edge.
And it was. And then it kind of went through its like DEI, like, you know, kind of phase where it really wasn't impactful. It wasn't really that interesting. You had Sephora enter into the fold and other beauty brands that really took its market share because MAC shined during a different time than like the influencer makeup brand. And I actually think this was a great campaign. I think it was cool that they worked with Julia Fox. You know, Julia Fox isn't someone that I'm, super huge on, but I think that it was a really well-aligned campaign. It was shocking. It cut through the noise and it was effective. And I liked that MAC went back to its roots. I feel like we're having so many conversations with these bigger brands and bigger companies where their marketing teams feel handcuffed. Like they can't execute anything that feels on brand, and it allows their socials to stop performing, but it's not a social problem. It's a brand problem. And I like that MAC is showing you that you can do things that push the boundary and get rewarded for it. So I want to applaud MAC. I think that is the celeb branding moment of the week. And I think there's a lot to learn from that. And if you're a brand that's not particularly controversial, you don't have to be controversial to cut through the noise, but you do have to do something interesting.
I was just looking her up, though. It doesn't, on her Wikipedia, it doesn't really talk much about the dominatrix. It talks about being a model and then her acting career. I just want to make sure we don't defame her. But
Matrix. I think it was in her book. Yeah. So she was here's an article right here. Julia Fox says working as a dominatrix empowered her and taught her how to act.
That's interesting. So Wikipedia that's now getting censored doesn't have that. Because to me, that's a formative thing in her character development.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of going into business and acting. She had a tough childhood. Like she almost died of heroin overdose at 17 and got indicted. So really a cool character. But from a branding perspective, I think what brands can learn is that you don't need, like very boring people to represent your brand. And her story is impressive and controversial. And then that emphasizes what MAC used to have, right?
Yeah.
That you're controversial and impressive and bold and unapologetic. And that's why I think that was a great collaboration for what MAC wants to appeal to, especially in young people who are looking to show their own identities through makeup.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm just skimming this. You bring up such a great point. Like what makes these campaigns interesting is when they have depth. Mm-hmm. It's like when they mean something. And like that campaign wouldn't have been as cool if they just like hired a random model and they were just like naked on the subway. And it was like, like it ties to her brand. And that's another thing for bigger brands with bigger budgets. It's cool to do these like cross-branding moments where you can say something by also riding on someone else's brand and what that means. And that's where like I actually really like this because there was a moment where Julia Fox was having her like 15 minutes and like brands were just like throwing purses and stuff at her so she, would be shot with them. But that's not really what makes Julia Fox interesting is that you can't really put her into a box, but like she has weight to her name because there's a darkness there. And I love that MAC tapped into that.
To me, it's a refreshing example of a corporate headquarters making a thoughtful brand collaboration that has actually depth. So the people behind that campaign had some depth and intellectual thinking to know why it would resonate as opposed to a lot of the kind of surface level, let's just get a celebrity and then slap them with their stuff and it means nothing.
Well, quick fun fact about MAC. MAC is a Canadian company. And MAC really had its moment actually like in the States, like New York, LA. Like it was the lipstick of the late 90s, early 2000s. And the founders of MAC opened Impact Kitchen in Toronto. So
no way.
For American listeners, Impact Kitchen is like, I don't know why they haven't expanded further. It's like one of the best like restaurants.
It should be in LA and New York for sure.
It's so good. And it's like all paleo dishes. They're just very well made, very good ingredients. It's like they have a grab and go concept. It's just very well done.
It's unapologetically healthy without being political.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no vegan atmosphere to it. It's just, we're just giving you whole food stuff here and no carbs, and it's spectacular.
No, there's carbs, but it's paleo, right? Because paleo is what's made from the ground. So like the bun is like non-refined, non-processed.
Sweet potato, but anyhow.
Yeah.
But MAC to me, just from a branding thing, if we examine it, when I was younger and I recognize MAC stood out as somebody who didn't buy lipstick, who might buy it for my daughters or the women in my life back then, but they had that uniform of being all black.
Yeah.
They're people who worked in the department store looked different than the other, and they deliberately made themselves outliers, right? And there was that kind of almost gothic but black feel to it that I think attracted people. When you go into like a Bloomingdale's or something, there's like a sea of makeup counters, and then the MAC one stood out as this kind of dark black place where people wore black uniforms.
No, I even like collected MAC lipsticks, and because there was just such a cool factor to like there was a bulletness to the lipstick, right? Like it was and the formulas were good and they had so many colors, and it actually really made me understand the lipstick effect when that concept became so big during COVID. Is like in down markets people buy cheap things.
Yeah.
And I remember like from me being, working young and having disposable income because my parents didn't make me pay rent while I lived there as a teenager, I would buy so many lipsticks because of the price point. They were $22 back in the day. And it was like after work, because I worked at the restaurant that I was a waitress at was in the parking lot of my local big mall. And it was just such a like fun treat to go and buy myself because Aritzia was still $150 per shirt, per pants. $20 just feels like that nice treat. So I had a bunch of the lipsticks. And under the auspice that I was going to like collect them. No idea where they went. I got all these like collector editions too of these lipsticks. And anyways, I just thought that was an interesting little aside. Impact Kitchen is very good. So if any of our American listeners ever come to Toronto, put Impact Kitchen on your list and you'd be shocked that they're owned by the Mac family because there's like no indication of it. Like it's a very well executed healthy restaurant.
It's making me think they're not like Gentle Monster, but it would be an interesting collaboration, you know what I mean, to kind of build
Gentle
up
Monster and Mac? Yeah.
No, Gentle Monster and their cafe, Mac and their kitchen. You know what I mean? Like,
an Impact Kitchen? Yeah. That's interesting. Definitely interesting. Hot or not? I'm really excited for this. All right. So these are the breakdown of the brand collaborations and brand activations this week, and we're going to give them a hot or not label. So we're first starting with the Apple Apple x Jacquemus collaboration. And this is definitely getting the label hot. So for those who don't know, this past week was Paris Fashion Week. And what Apple did is they were the exclusive technological partners of the Jacquemus Jacquemus fashion show, so that every single thing was shot on an Apple iPhone 16 Pro Max. So everything on the runway, all of the like assets, visualizations of like showcasing each of the products. And it was really cool. They have these like robotic, almost probably
remote controlled.
They're these like robotic remote controlled arms that were like shooting and capturing the clothes using almost like a dynamic movement. So it felt kind of more like a gimbal. And what they did as like a setup piece is the elevator that people took to go into the Paris Fashion Week, they had that set up with Apple iPhones. So they had all the behind the scenes shot with Apple iPhone. The entire photo shoot and runway spectacular was shot with Apple iPhone. And then every guest that showed up to the fashion show was also shot on an Apple iPhone 16. So all of the content, plus more, was all shot on an Apple iPhone 16. And I thought that it was a fantastic collaboration because what Jacquemus does so well is organic content. So Jacquemus is a for those who don't know, it's a premium fashion house. They do things in a luxury concept, but their price point isn't luxury. So it's kind of like a bit fast fashion-y, if I was to be a bit blunt. But I don't want to minimize what the brand is doing because the brand is really executing. So it's kind of like streetwear meets like high-end fashion. It's a very unique brand, and there really hasn't been a brand that's done anything like this. But what's so interesting is it shows you how much things need to be social first, because iPhone is the best API connection for the social media platforms. So having everything shot on an Apple iPhone 16 makes it already ready to go for social media. So it was a really brilliant collab because I think that Apple is like on this like weird precipice for potential like brand ostracization, where like people don't really feel as connected with Apple. The rollouts aren't as good. We're wondering, why do we keep feeling like we need to buy a new phone? But having this kind of this cultural zeitgeist moment of being the exclusive fashion show partner is a hot move.
It's hot. It's interesting because you're making the determination, like everybody has better cameras, right? And so photographers want to use the best cameras, the best lenses. But by making it an Apple event, you're kind of telling people you can make pictures worthy of a fashion show. You know what I mean? Like
you can shoot everything on your iPhone.
It's got a message to anybody
who has value
it,
to
right?
the phone.
And it's easy to share because everything was done on an iPhone. Everybody who was there, it's easy to share, to airdrop. It was actually a very smart collaboration.
It was very, very smart.
That was hot. And it allowed us to get pictures and images of people in a lot more kind of natural conditions too, because the phones were everywhere.
Well, especially too, like even the elevator like became a moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like what's cool is like the elevator became a moment of like our eyeballs seeing the people showing up in a different way than we see people arriving at
The
fashion
red
shows.
carpet, yeah.
But it also became a moment because we saw the iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, it became a social moment on both sides of like just an absolutely well done, fascinating execution. And Jacquemus is going through this play right now of almost providing a renaissance to technology. They're not trying to be advanced for advanced sake. They're showcasing how we can still do classic things with the assistance of technology, which is interesting from the larger conversation happening with AI. And it's cool. Like a lot of the Jacquemus campaigns right now are like showing they have this one cool campaign of like the London ribbon cutting. I'm going to show you. It's really quite cool. And but it kind of looks, they're like old school like fabric scissors, but it's all being done technologically. So it's kind of this like intersection of like, here we go. Click on that one with the umbrella and I'll make sure it's going up. See how it's like they're kind of making technology, they're showing old things being done in a new way.
It's almost Gentle Monsterish.
It's very Gentle Monsterish. It's very Gentle Monsterish, but it's kind of interesting. It's like less avant-garde.
Less tech, more retro.
Yeah, more old school European. It's like European Gentle Monster.
Yeah, it looks like 1950s science fiction. Like it's it's very cool. I love it.
Yeah, right? So cool.
Just every time you say Jacquemus, I feel like I'm saying Jacquemus.
Jacquemus.
Like when I'm frustrated. F me,
Jacquemus. So that's Jacquemus. That gets definitely the hot label. Next is Bala x Pucci. So do you know who Pucci is? Pucci is not Gucci. Pucci is an Italian designer that was also very big in the early 2000s for a very kind of like retro, almost like.
Were you going to say hot or not and say what that was? I don't know if you did or not.
I said hot.
Oh, but for the next one.
Pucci, yeah.
Bali Pucci, you haven't said hot or not yet.
Oh, okay, I can say hot. That's fine.
Okay. Is it hot again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's hot.
Oh, we got some knots.
We have knots.
Okay, good.
I think the Pucci. So Gucci is not Pucci. Pucci is almost like a 60s style, like bold patterns, very bright colors. They were very big in the early 2000s. They've kind of become a bit of like, it's a bit of like an Italian brand in the sense of like, you see a lot of like chic Italian moms still rocking the pattern. It really is a high-end brand. And what I like about Pucci is that they haven't really sold out. So they exist. They're there. I would say the fashion community respects Pucci. It hasn't really had its like full revival, but they're not overly forcing it. It's just kind of like cool. So Bala is a weighted kind of workout brand. They became famous for bringing back the like old school weighted like arm weight and like ankle weights. And I like that this collaboration is cool because Bala is a premium brand. And I think it's the absolute right collaboration for its customer. So Bala really understands that its core customer would think something like Pucci is chic. It's probably outside of their regular price range. I don't think it's an interesting brand extension for Pucci because it's not quite a luxury extension, but it is for that consumer, right? Like someone who's walking around with weighted ankle, like and weighted wrists is someone that's kind of more of a chic consumer. So it feels like the right kind of brand extension and right entry point into the brand, which is similar to what Goyard did by introducing Goyard wallets, right? Is they have that lower price point of entryway into the brand. You get that brand loyalty. It creates a kind of next gen of consumers. So I think it's a hot partnership. I love the way that they did the campaign. It's very retro, very vintage looking.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that works.
And I think it's well done. Like I think it's cool. It's hot. So I'm giving that a hot rating. Next is McDonald's. So McDonald's did its first ever female athlete meal. So what McDonald's became famous for a few years ago with Travis Scott is they started actually selling celebrity orders. And became like a massive phenomenon because it tapped into who their customer actually was. And they ended up actually like selling out the world on like ingredients and like, because these just became like all of the fans of these rappers and these stars were going to get their order. So it'd be like the quarter pounder with no pickles. You know what I mean? Or like the quarter pounder with like no pickles, no ketchup, with Chipotle mayo. So it was like actually the modifications that these like stars would use. Really fantastic and interesting framework. But this week they did the first ever for a female athlete, and it's Angel Reese, who is a female basketball player. And I actually think it's a hot. Like, I think it's hot because of the way they shot the campaign. I don't know who Angel Reese is, but I love that they did this kind of like almost Space Jam, like retro kind of campaign. And they put her in like a McDonald's jersey, which is like, I think
you're very right. The Space Jam feel is there. And that's very easy for teenagers to get behind.
Yeah.
It looks
She's a
great.
WNBA player.
Yeah. I know she's a WNBA player. I just don't know what team she's on.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Do you know what team she's on?
Not offhand, but I can tell you.
Yeah, I know so it's the first ever female athlete meal that they've done. So
Cool.
I think it's hot. I do think
I
though
was
it's
hopping on to the WNBA success this year. I wonder what Caitlin Collins is doing, the one who won Player of the Year. But it's nice to tap into that WNBA success. I don't know if that's the girl who was competing with Caitlin all year long, because there was a big, cool controversy. But they're tapping into controversy, celebrating something, and that'll bring people in the door for sure.
Yeah, and I love the way they did the ad. I think that it's like a very well done, like it visually is very interesting. So I think that's a hot. Don't worry, knots are coming. But this was a good week. The next is Cadbury launched a made to share campaign. So they redid their packaging, kind of in a bit like the share a Coke, you know, like how Coke like named them, kind of on that line. But what they did is they redid the the outside of the packaging based on like square break off, based on like different kind of zeitgeist moments. So it's like who booked the flight gets half the bar, who booked the hotel gets a quarter of the remaining half, and then who gets to go on holiday gets like the last square. And it's like who keeps the group chat buzzing gets like 70% of the bar. Who chips in gets like half of the remaining 20%. And then the last square is like who leaves it on red. So like they're rewarding people from like zeitgeist moments. It's actually quite cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle. Like it does kind of capture what people are feeling. Like I'm not interested in eating the chocolate bar, so it doesn't make me want to buy the chocolate bar more. But like that's a campaign that's a question of well thought out, well articulated, but is it making people consume more product?
I think it is, because I think it now goes into like gift buying territory. So I think if they were to think strategically, like there's just a smaller percentage of people who are buying chocolate kind of period. But if you can increase purchase based on like a giving moment or like a laugh. Like I would like for this one, like this is hilarious. Like the larger part of the bar is who pays the subscription. And then the last like three squares is like viewer 2, viewer 3, viewer 4. And like that is funny when you're like a parent filling up for gas, you're going into the gas station and like you can like laughingly give your adult children, you know, like you guys can only get 2 squares because like, or me buying it for my parents, like if they pay for Netflix, like you pay for Netflix for all your kids. So like that would be like a funny gift for like them to bring in. I think that's where it's smart. Because,
no, I'm saying it's smart. I just don't know if it's going to be effective.
So it's yeah. I mean, I guess that's
like,
where we need.
There's a lot of advertising that's creative and smart, right? But it doesn't actually coincide with the revenue target. But from a brand perspective, it makes Cadbury a little cooler.
It does.
Right, and because really it's just an old chocolate bar with caramel inside, like.
No, there's no caramel in Cadbury. Caramel, because Cadbury.
Oh, caramel. Oh.
Cadbury is like the good one. It's the purple
that's like
one.
the yeah. Okay, so that makes more sense to me because it's a little bit more of an elite purchase, like a Christmas stocking purchase.
I think like amazing for stocking stuffers, amazing for birthdays, amazing for. I just think it goes into gift territory, which I think is smart for chocolate. Like it's got to be on the down. Like I would love to pull up.
They should have
stats
different
on
wrappers, like right on the outside. So like if you give it to a kid, it can say this much to your best friend, this much to the smartest person in the world, this much for your enemy. You know what I mean? And then at the party, you can kind of give them out.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Well, I think that's kind of what they're onto, which is hilarious. So that gets a hot.
medium.
Well, there's it's hot or it's not.
Okay.
It's not like you're kind of hot, you're kind of not. I think it gets a hot.
There's lots of kind of hot out there, but okay. If you think it's hot, then call it hot.
It's hot territory. So next is Sol de Janeiro. So Sol de Janeiro did like a sponsored corner at the top of the Aspen Peak in Snowmass. It's the Snowmass Mountain. And they did like a Sol de Janeiro branding. To me, this is a not. Sol de Janeiro is like literally spending so much on like PR and marketing activations. Like when we were in New York and meatpacking, they did one. I think it's a nod because it just doesn't have strategy to the brand. Like Sol de Janeiro is a Brazilian scented line of body products. They became famous for their bum bum cream. And it to me, I just feel like they're trying to be everywhere at all times. And I don't think that's strategic branding today. So I'm giving it a not. That also that corner on Snowmass and Aspen Mountain is like the brand corner. So like last year it was like a Gray Malin so 2 years ago it was Gray Malin with it was maybe just Gray Malin. It was like a red and white pop-up with maybe Grey Goose. And then they did last year like a Vouv corner, that same corner, and it was orange.
So it's kind of lazy.
It's lazy.
You're just kind of doing what others have done, thinking it's going to have an effect, but there's nothing unique or thoughtful or dynamic about it.
No, and I don't feel like skiing at the top of Snowmass is where I'm thinking about Brazilian warm scented body creams. Like, especially when we've been in enough cities throughout our work travel where Sol de Janeiro is always doing activations, and you can just tell like there isn't a strategy. They're just spending money. So to me, that's a not.
Yes.
Next one is Laneige. So they did a CGI campaign. It's also a skiing. And it's basically they made each of their water cream pods one of the
skiers.
What are those called?
Well, the cabana that takes you up.
It's not a cabana though.
Whatever it is. The thing that takes
Andrew,
you up.
what is it called when you're skiing?
What is it called?
Chairlift.
Well, it's not. That's not a chair lift, but you're in an internal one.
All right, word's coming.
Yeah.
A ski lift?
No, it's
But
like
the ski lift that you step into.
You know the step into and like it closes around you
Yes.
Yeah, on the big mountains.
on the big mountains.
Okay, whatever. They made that. Okay.
It's CGI. I'm giving it a hot. I actually think
This is a hot festival. This is boring. Let's say something interesting.
I did what I got something to say to
Okay.
it.
All right, it's okay. Let's
There's
go.
2 knots this week, but I think that's actually fine. It's a good week for branding. I mean, so the Laneige did this CGI based on they did like a ski campaign,
Yeah.
and the whole concept is like Laneige keeps your skin healthy during ski season. And
Smart.
I actually think it's a hot moment. Philip is annoyed that they're all seeming to be hots, but I actually would be quite ruthless if they were not.
No, but that was good. That represents the moment well.
Gondola?
Gondola.
Gondola.
It's a gondola. So, the reason why I'm giving it a hot factor is I think that CGI provides a really interesting and unique way to have a sales-focused moment.
It's entertaining.
It's entertaining.
The way that the CGI works is entertaining, and it's got a direct link to something that people experience on the slopes, which is dry skin. So it's well
And
done.
it's just visually interesting all around. So CGI is something I highly recommend your brand explore while it's having its moment because it's working. It's hard when you're focused on like selling products on socials, and like selling on socials doesn't work if you're doing it directly. Like we don't go on socials to sell, like just to be sold to. We go on socials to be like entertained or educated, to receive value. So what I like about these CGI moments is that it's checking both of those boxes. I feel entertained. You're feeling like you're giving me a sales focused moment. We both win. So that's a hot. Next is another CGI campaign brought to you by Benefit. So here's the ad. The ad is a woman who's like clearly pumping something up on the base of what looks like Soho. And like these random eyelashes are formed on the top of the building, and then a bunch of stuff comes out of the roof. This is getting an absolute not from me. There's like no strategy to it. It's not interesting. There's been several CGI moments with like big eyelashes on buildings or buses or things where it's been done well. this is lazy. Like there's just random eyelashes being built on the
But
connect
it's not even well done.
on the roof. Like it's
Even the graphics isn't that well done. I don't know if they're deliberately trying to look whimsical, but it doesn't connect.
no, and like I don't understand like why is there like random shit coming out of the roof? Like
No.
it's like balloon animals and like a random eyeball that flies out. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Creative without intellectual strategy.
Yeah, so it's
I'm not.
not. And the reason I wanted to compare the both of them is like CGI still needs strategy to be interesting.
Mhm.
And that might seem simple and like obvious, but it's, you know, when you're seeing brands that they just take a buzzword, they just take something that's hot and they just don't add strategy to
But
it.
the
and it
thing that
doesn't
you want to know
work.
about that is how much was spent on that ad. You know what I mean? Was that $50,000 at an advertising agency to
No,
like?
they're done by CGI creators.
Yeah.
It's a very niche industry.
Yeah.
Like the CGI creator pool, it's a burgeoning industry. There's like 5 that are doing this for all of the brands. It's about $1,200. It's not a lot of money, but it still requires thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that is the benefit not. Next one is we've got 2 more.
I have one.
Do you want to go?
No, you go. I'll finish it up.
The next one is Chamberlain's Coffee. So Chamberlain's Coffee is by Emma Chamberlain. She's actually a really interesting case study to study, no matter how old you are. She's become very big with Gen Zs. And she was originally a YouTube star, did really well creating content during the pandemic and created a video per day and posted it and built this like loyal and big following. And she was like always making coffee on her YouTubes and then created her own coffee line called Chamberlain's Coffee. And she's just doing such a great job of selling it. And it's such a proof, like she's really is taking out behemoths in the industry like Folgers and Maxwell House, like these coffee companies, because she's actually using social media effectively and interestingly. And the coffee is good enough that a lot of people within different age ranges are buying Chamberlain's Coffee. So she's actually gone in store, like she has like a wholesale agreement. But this week marks her first actual brick and mortar store. And to me, it's a total hot because it shows you how big demand you can build by developing your own community online. And like she was able to grow to this point because she's continued to reinvest in creating organic content to like creating content every day and building a tribe. And there's the Emma Chamberlain brand and then there's the Chamberlain Coffee brand, and both are thriving. So I think it's a really good case study for influencer founded brands that are actually making positive change and are doing well.
I think it's also a case for companies looking into, we've talked about it before, a company has a spokesperson or an avatar.
Yeah.
The reason why influencer brands are doing so well is they've invested in being trusted. So you can't just pick a model and have a campaign, but like if you invest in an avatar who's a personality that represents your brand, that can do things that allow people to trust that avatar, like people are moving to brands because they trust the spokesperson.
Yeah.
An influencer who's won the trust of a community, they trust it. So for corporate brands, how do you compete against that? How do people trust you again?
Yeah, that's a great point. So next on mine is Abode x Charlotte Tilbury. This is a collaborative concept where effectively Charlotte Tilbury, who's a very big UK beauty makeup artist, has created this collaboration with this store that actually is a really interesting concept. So Abode, they sell their own products, which you can get embroidered. And it's like not embroidering done like the boring way. Like it's really kind of quite cool and unique. But you can also bring in your own things to get embroidered. And it's a kind of this concept of like, you don't have to continue to consume from us to like to make it customly yours. Like you can bring in your own pillow sheets. You can bring in your own makeup bags. You can bring in your own clothes to get embroidered. And Charlotte Tilbury effectively created like a line of colors for Abode and did a little pop-up in the store. And I think it's hot because it's tapping into like niche communities. And a lot of these bigger beauty brands are focusing on like really big partnerships that fall flat, like a Charlotte Tilbury x Macy's or like a Charlotte Tilbury x Bergdorf Goodman's, like these bigger brands opposed to these like one-off smaller concepts that have these like niche followings. And it shows you the power of niche audiences because I hadn't heard about Abode when I like searched them. They don't have a crazy amount of followers. People that I follow that are like, if you know kind of people, like the trend finders are the ones following them. So they're kind of, in my way, what's interesting is I learned about Abode through Charlotte Tilbury, but I'm like, I think Charlotte Tilbury is cooler because it's tapping into people that aren't huge. And it shows you the power of those niche audiences, because if a brand like Charlotte Tilbury is focusing on this like smaller niche, almost upcycling brand, it shows like where bigger brands are focusing for community building.
Mm-hmm. I don't really have anything to say on that. I think I agree with you.
Cool. So what else is on your, then I got
Well-
one more that I saw this morning. Give me your hot or not.
No, you do yours and then I'll wrap up with mine because I think mine's a bit of a wrap up one.
Okay, cool. So the last one is Casper X DeMello. So they did, Casper is a Canadian
Sleep brand?
sleep brand. Very well done sleep brand, by the way. Like I own literally everything Casper. Their dog bed. I've got their sheets. I have one of their mattresses. I have their pillows.
They're light.
Their lights. I am literally like how I have everything Apple, I have everything Casper. So I got an ad from them, and DeMello is, in the Well, there's
Yeah.
like that with that tiger, that coffee shop that's like closer to Era on Spadina. It's got a really cool logo. It's this kind of like this like almost like Nacho Libre inspired like tiger. I don't know if it's Asian. I don't know if it's like Mexican, like fighter, but it's like this kind of bright yellow, really interesting kind of mask face. So Casper did a collaboration where you're doing a pre-order. It's $50 and you get 2 silk masks that have like almost the tiger's like funny
cool.
eyeballs on them. And you get a bag of coffee. And it's like a specific like Casper X DeMello branded coffee. I'm giving it a nod.
Oh, really?
But I think the partnership is interesting. I think that the way they also did it also is it's a pre-order. So like the way the ad is like pre-order this, it closes February 5th or February 6th. So they're creating this like drop capsule concept. But where I think they missed the mark is I think that they could have done a better job of explaining the collaboration. I think even the way the ad came up, it was like DeMello X Casper pre-order now. There was no logos. There was no like visual of what the product was.
It should have seen visuals of people looking cool sleeping with a mask.
Yeah, well, wait to see how cool the mask is.
Because people like masks. And if you're just putting on a black one, it's kind of cool to have this masquerade feel. When
No,
you go to sleep.
100%. And I just feel like across the board, like I think the concept is really interesting. It makes me sad that they kind of missed the mark. So this wasn't the ad. So this was what the ad should be. It should be like Casper X DeMello pre-order now. But they're putting money into an ad when I don't follow them, because I'm not going to follow a mattress company on Instagram, where they put the true visuals on their in-feed. And then their ad, which is actually marketing to more people that they don't know, love the brand, is not coming with the visuals for the product. So I'm only giving it a nod because idea is there, love what they're trying to do, but execution could have been done better.
Wonderful. My hot or not gets a bit into more deeper contextual issues that are in the marketing world. But since we speak to a lot of founders who are struggling with marketing and marketers who are trying to stay relevant, with the new transition of power in the United States, we have seen a transition clearly away from DEI.
Yeah.
So DEI is now not hot. Whatever your politics are, we're in the business of helping people make money. And so we need to be grounded in reality. And the timing of it was really emphasized by that LA fire chief who came out and said, well, if I can't carry somebody down the stairs, I would say to that person who needs rescue, why did you put yourself in that position? And there are branding moments that move tides, and you can see in business a strong tide away from it. So as founders, it can be a good relief because you can now go back to common sense and say, like, let's focus on what works, what my target audience is. Let's stop trying to please everybody and let's please the people that need our products. And for marketers, I think we were talking about there's a lot of preference falsification out there where people are saying things that they don't actually believe because they don't want to be outed and or judged. But we're in the business of companies making millions or going bankrupt. And if companies go bankrupt, people can't pay their mortgages. And so I think what's hot now is going back to just purely rational decisions about how do we serve our marketplace.
Yep.
Companies can save a lot of money now and not trying to please everybody. So what's not hot right now is DEI, whether you like it or not. And I think for marketers, you have to adapt and get back to reality.
I think getting back to reality, though, is not quite the right finalized. It's getting back to your brand's core, right? And that's what I was writing about this week. Is the whole DEI concept is so complicated because you feel like you can't argue against what seems like the right thing to say on its face. And the question of what makes branding and art and what makes branding so complicated is understanding what is the right message for what your aim is. And if your aim is a conversion and you're in an attention economy and you're fighting for eyeballs, if you're saying something that doesn't directly tie to your differentiator, why this matters for the customer and why that you're the best product or service for the job that you solve, it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed gift.
But
And
when I say reality, I actually mean it, because what happens is target market, there has been an absence of reality in actually determining what human behaviors trigger buying patterns, because people have been grouped in everybody is this, everybody is this. There's no difference between demographics, age groups, cultures, races, right? And so people haven't even been able to have conversations about that stuff. Now, I think we're going to have many of the big companies are going to have permission to go back into saying, okay, what do we have to do to target the customers, as opposed to appearing to be just vanilla to everybody.
Well, it just, where it becomes complicated is the larger question for the bigger companies that we're discussing. It's an ESG issue. So it's when do the stock price valuation, at what benchmark are they being graded at? Because the DEI appointments, if those are coming down, what does that do to Walmart's stock, right? And that's where it's complicated. If you're a smaller, medium-sized business, you've been having your marketing team direct you based on what they're looking up. And it's like, don't look up, because these public companies are doing things under different benchmarks than what makes sense for your smaller business. So from that's where I think this conversation is just a bit more complicated, because we're starting to see the fall or pull back from these bigger companies for how much money they were spending for these DEI internal organizations. But what does that mean for the ESG stock price valuation? Because that's why they were there.
You know, Walmart canceled all of their DEI programs, and their stock has gone up over the last couple months. So.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's when we're
But they
when we're
canceled
doing
it this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the last few
But
months.
in a week, it hasn't dropped.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But that's the more interesting conversation is like, how is this impacting the larger public companies? I think where the small to medium-sized business owner, it's like, just don't look up. You know, like this DEI movement has felt like such a train to jump on, and these bigger companies are realizing that they've been spending a lot of money without effect because they were doing this for not the right reasons. They're trying to please everybody.
And that negative effect is amplified at a smaller level.
Yeah.
So if you're copying kind of an ad campaign of a bigger firm that's already got seized market share, you know, they can afford that mistake. But if you're a medium or small size business, you can't afford to waste your marketing dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think leads us into that boosting Facebook topic we were going to talk about.
Yes. Well, so this is really interesting. So for those who don't know, this is not new. It's newer. But on Meta, so Facebook turned to Meta, owns Instagram and Facebook. So Apple. So really, really interesting thing about Apple is I got this comment on our video on TikTok about, we were like kind of tearing apart Apple iPhone 16, the UI UX, what this means for Apple at large. And he said under Steve Jobs, Apple was hyper-focused on product. But under Tim Cook, Apple is hyper-focused on subscriptions. And the reason being is Tim Cook identified that there was like a kind of like a plateau in where technology has gone for how much they can improve product specifications year over year. So if Apple changed its focus to being a subscription-based business, it could continue on that hockey stick growth. It could continue to grow to this like behemoth of a brand and a business, which is really, really interesting when you actually analyze what Apple is pushing and what Apple has become. It's really become an app and a subscription-based business, and it's focused on having the best and the most amount of apps. Even when we went into the Apple store to get my laptop fixed, there's like this whole pitch of like, speak to a business advisor. It's free. You can sit down with him and he can tell you about all the apps that are available to help your business. So they're trying to educate and inform Apple customers on the range of apps that can like create solutions for their life, because those apps could result in a Rundle, a monthly subscription fee for X amount of hundreds or thousands of dollars per year, per month. And that's a better model for them to get into because they already have you hooked and bought on a product. So, which leads to where I'm going with the boosting piece, which is Apple's changed its model. So Apple, if you boost a post on your Instagram in feed or in your Facebook, and it goes through Apple Pay, which is super easy. The downside is it's costing you 30% more money. So as this change first happened, and they only did a small amount of comms, Meta said, go on your desktop, do it through your desktop, do the boost.
What's the justification for a 30% fee? Like when you exchange money, like what are they doing to earn that 30%? It seems rather...
Or maybe it's 25. Maybe it's 25.
No, it's 25 to 30 because I just did it.
It's a lot of money.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Right? And it's interesting because as they're doing these brand collabs that are making everybody use their phones more, then you get addicted to that because it's easy. Now they're now just gouging you on a boost. Like there's not a value for that.
It's actually an antitrust argument. And that was why, what was that famous video game that like taught all the kids all the dance moves?
Just Dance.
No, that's like, actually, it's like a Call of Duty, but they dance in it.
I thought it was Just Dance.
Fortnite.
Oh.
Like Fortnite had that massive lawsuit with Apple because it's taking so much, but Apple is now in this position where it's like, it's antitrust. Like because everybody has it, they can demand it because where else are you going to go? Right? Like you can go to Samsung.
No, most kids don't have a desktop. Like most young people don't even work off of it unless they go to work, right? And you don't want to be boosting
it's a huge thing. But for those who are boosting their content, you're spending 25 to 30% more money by doing it through your phone. So do it on your desktop.
Save 30%.
Save 30%. And honestly, if you can afford the 30% difference, I would increase what you're planning to boost it on your desktop by 30%, so that you can get more reach, more engagement, more impressions.
And honestly, Facebook is a place people aren't using enough. Facebook gives you exceptional targeting ability that other ads don't in the same way. And so work from your desktop and use Facebook to target your audience better. To me,
you're saying something different though.
Yeah.
You work from your desktop and boost your meta-based posts through the desktop.
Yeah.
Separately, Facebook has actually had a really interesting renaissance, and we're seeing a lot of clients generate a lot of business and conversions by Facebook content.
This is called woman-splaining for the audience, but let's go ahead.
Well, you're tying two concepts together that both need to be explained.
I like them to be tied. Let's go ahead. Keep woman-splaining. It's fine. I'll just sit over here.
It presents a massive opportunity. More people are going on Facebook. More people are buying off of Facebook. Facebook was like the dead zone for like 2 or 3 years, and it's really made a comeback. So it's worth considering Facebook. Also, it's worth considering Snapchat. So Snapchat pays its creators the most amount of money. And they're really making a push for more people to use Snapchat because initially it was like really a place for like young people. Like if you ask Gen Zs, they don't even like give each other people like their cell phone numbers. They all just like add each other on Snapchat. They do all their communication through Snapchat. And I've started to find like parents, like my mom's all over Snapchat because parents always go where their kids are. But they always adapt later. So there's now like young people and older people, but it's kind of missing that like millennial kind of pocket. But what's really interesting is Snapchat has become really like the biggest platform in the Middle East. And it's really fascinating. What they're doing is there's a feature where you can allow people to drop information to you, whether it's like add you as a contact or add you as send photos, or for businesses to send promotions. So as you're like walking through the Mall of Dubai, businesses can like send you promotions to your phone, which are like, and they can customize them. Like they can give Philip different promotions than me. And there's like someone working out, like standing out front of the store that's like dropping and sending these promotional sales, which is like brilliant.
You know, it would be better because I love the idea of, I've often had a business idea of making sellers work for buyers as opposed to buyers have to work to spend their money.
Yeah.
So sending me offers when I go into a mall is cool. I like the idea of going into a mall and on Snapchat and saying, I'm looking for this as I go into the mall. And then seeing what offers come from the people in the mall.
There's so much for it to grow and evolve.
Right?
And
but I come in and I say, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And then an algorithm checks it out. And then you can get offers and have people compete. It would be interesting.
Well, it would be interesting if the business even gave AI autonomy that they can customize an offer within these parameters so that the consumer feels like it's like there's just so much for where it can go. But what's also really cool is I met a fantastic airline hostess for Air Canada, which I really need to shout it out when I see it because I've got many feelings about Air Canada. And she was amazing. And she was like showing me, like she was going through like this whole buying process because she goes direct shot from Toronto to Dubai like twice a month. It does all of her beauty stuff and all of her shopping. and how much like businesses are just ingrained into the Snapchat universe. Like they're like the way that the ads run, they're like mini landing pages. You can swipe up, it goes like instantly into like messaging them. They can WhatsApp you. Like they're so interconnected in a way that like just makes way more sense. And it's way more customizable because like you're talking to an agent of the business when you're interested in like doing a service.
It's using the phone properly to secure a purchase.
Yeah, it's really, so it shows you like if you're looking for ways of like where there's underpriced attention, the North American Snapchat model, it's not fully there yet, but if you get ahead of it early and start like mastering it, it's such a great place for, it's coming. And Dubai and Korea, like these places are ahead of us. And why we went to the Middle East is we're just getting so many more clients coming out of the Middle East, and they're not Arabic. They're like North Americans that like are moving from LA, from Texas into Dubai. Like there's just a mass exodus and move to Dubai. So it shows you that they're ahead of the curve, and we're planting seeds for where we think is coming. So that's the boosting kind of 411. Let's talk about how to grow. So I've in the past few weeks have had several conversations on a super hot topic that I think everyone is interested in, and it is how to grow on social media. Because everybody's looking for that like simple trick, that like magic pill for how to grow followers. And I actually have it. And it's probably not the answer that you're looking for. And it's one that actually poses for an interesting conversation. And the simple answer is you have to be posting at least 2 times a day. 2 to 3 times per day, every day is the secret to growing fast on social media. And here are some interesting elements to that. So I was having this conversation with a pretty well-known jeweler, and she's just like struggling. She's like, she's using trial reels, which is a really cool new addition to Instagram that you should be looking at, where you can actually like post a video through trial mode and you can see like how it performs. And then if it performs, you can actually like really launch it. So it gives you like a good indicator of like how things are working. And she's posting 2 to 3 times per day, and she's using trial reels as a way to kind of decide like what actually makes it to the feed. And she's growing quickly and everything is going great. But what makes it really interesting is that day that her and I were having a conversation, she talked about which of her 3 videos performed the best that day. And what's fascinating is I actually happened to be on social media that day quite a bit. And I'd seen her top performing video, but I didn't see the other 2 videos that she had posted. And this is what is interesting is like people fear that they're going to be annoying, that they're going to like bother their followers and they're just going to be like spamming them. But the problem is that the algorithm doesn't show your content to all of your followers. And you can actually, the more that you post, you can start to notice more trends. So the content that's like, I posted an Excite post, which was me being in Cosmo and my full feature in Cosmo. The people that liked it and commented it are like the people I actually know. It's like my family, my friends, like professionals I met along the way that are genuinely interested in like my milestones of success. When I post like videos that are more like small business oriented, the people that like it and comment it are people that I don't know, that are followers that are like small business owners. So it shows you that not your followers aren't created equally. It's not like when they follow you, you're just a follow. Like who is following you is categorized by what they're interested in for that follow based on how they communicate to you and how they speak to you. Like it's all the algorithm is fully based on AI. So it shows you if you're posting 2 to 3 posts per day, all of your followers aren't seeing it, which is why you have to post multiple times per day, because that's the only way to grow.
I think there's definitely some room for discussion here, because I think the one thing about social digital media is that the science is kind of unknown. Like every day you'll see an influencer say, this is the secret, this is the answer, this is the answer. Like I would lean in my trends more towards quality versus quantity, and you can use language. So the way to get followers is X. Maybe, but if your content's not good and it's not getting engagement, like it might not work for you. Like the way to get followers from my perspective is to make a viral piece of content that's amazing. And then one piece, and this is what Gary Vee says, is you don't need a bunch of followers now. You need an amazing piece of content that's educational, and you can get 100,000 followers in 2 weeks.
Okay, so you're bringing up a good point, which is worth explaining. So the problem with creating content is the entry point versus the benchmark for success are very different conversations. Where you need to enter into the content creating framework is by focusing on quality over quantity. So when I talk to a lot of like business owners and like professional service providers, it's like, I'm not telling you how many times per week to post. I'm telling you, show up and make at least 2 really great pieces of content. Like just like actually plan, have a strategy, and like just execute. However, once you're doing that, and it does become a numbers game, right? Like you grow, you sell more when more people are seeing your content. So now from the perspective of where we're at, right? Like we're creating content, we know it works. We know if you want to continue to grow, you then have to post every single day. But the content that we're posting every single day is quality content. So that's kind of the issue, is like there's a lot of people who have been successful. Like the algorithm has changed greatly, and it's like much harder to grow today than it was 4 or 5 years ago, because creating good content is just easier with platforms like CapCut. So it's kind of 2 interesting questions, because when we're getting hired, right, by people, they're coming in and they're hiring us, that KPI of like success metrics is harder to benchmark unless you're paying to get a piece of content out every single day. And that's where it becomes a bit more complicated.
I think it's somewhat counterintuitive too, because I heard one person say something that was interesting, in that go back to your last 10 posts on your grid, if we're talking about Instagram, which I'm not sure how much followers are worth these days based on how often I follow somebody. It's very rare, right? So but it says find the ones that got the most engagement with new people and the new followers, and then just post it again. And where that seemed to be reinforced is when I was showing you that hilarious video of the baby trying wasabi.
Yeah.
And she's like, help, right? And then we looked at the account, and it was that same video posted 30 times, and it had 100,000 followers. And all that account did was posted the same video.
Yeah.
30 times.
And it had so many different view counts, like some at 8 million, some at 100,000, some at 1,000. It was the same video.
Think of what the algorithm is doing. You're getting followers, posting one exceptional piece of content again and again and again. But is that aligned with your strategic goals of your business? So what is it that we want to do with social media is more important. So I think. But
okay, yeah, but I do want to clarify though something, and you're not wrong. The issue with social media today is that you shouldn't be focusing on how many followers you have, because think about how many people you're following per week. You like maybe 3 people per week. And if nobody is really following anyone, the ask for increasing followers is actually a very high bar. Like it's really not the bar to because there's more people who can know you without following you and like your comment, engage because like the algorithm knows like whose videos to throw at you based on your viewership, your viewer history. But here's the issue with what we're saying. Creating great content allows for more engagement, more eyeballs, which also can result in more followers. So looking at followers alone is flawed, but creating really great content also results in followers. So the whole point of me saying like creating a great piece of content every single day or twice a day, you need to get into a different mindset, and it takes time. Like from this podcast, we can get 12 really great clips. Well, that's a post per day for the next 2 weeks, and we produce content at a very high rate. That's where we're at. But our content, when it's good posts and they go out, gets strong engagement and gets followers. So that's where it's kind of like, don't focus on followers alone, but good content is resulting in strong engagement, which if they feel really aligned with you, out of every 100 eyeballs, you'll get 1 follow, right? And that's kind of where I'm saying is like, they're not different benchmarks. It's just don't isolate followers alone.
And in your content though, the algorithm likes if people watch the whole thing. And too many people go on too long in their content. And so the algorithm, if people watch it from start to finish, right? We've talked about that. But I think that's why some short content gets more followers, because you make something short, controversial, and people have to watch it again to understand it. You're getting more engagement. The algorithm is sending it out. If you're doing long explanations of things, it's a different platform strategy.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. And that's, I think, just like a really interesting, so trial reels, though, really interesting new feature to test out. Yeah. Another thing you bring up, which is like brilliant, is reuse content. So this brand, Havre Studio, really love them, love her approach to customer service, HAVRE. And she's basically like taking really well-made old blazers and like repurposing them so that they're like this kind of, it's really a cool concept. It's like so upcycling cool, yeah. And her marketing and branding is fantastic. It's just very well done. But what I'm noticing with a lot of these like recent startups that have like all these followers they're like reusing content. And it shows you that it's an impossible ask to just like keep coming out with new content. Like reuse what works, like change the caption a little bit, like give a new purpose to the video. And then if one of your followers does see it again, it's not annoying because you're giving another reason to watch or view that content. So she's a good person to look at of like reusing content, right? And it's the world we live in now. Like that's kind of the thing. And you bring up a good point. It's like, what are your benchmark? What are your goals? A lot of businesses listening to this, like if you're a solopreneur and there's only so much business that you can handle, just create really great content once or twice a week. But if you're a CPG that like, you have sales metrics and you want to open up 2 flagships, well, you need to be producing content at a different rate, right? Like not all benchmarks are the same for where you want to go. So it's where do you want to go? How fast do you want to get there? And do you have money or time? And like that, those are the other questions too, is like, if you don't have money to be producing content and having people editing them, then you need time. And these are the variables that of like, there isn't a one size fits all
But what
solution.
we've said time and time again to people too is you don't actually need perfect. You can produce, if the fashion show can use the phone to produce all of their content, you can produce your content with your phone. You don't have to spend $100,000 on a commercial.
Boom, mic drop, use your phone. So let's talk about principles.
Well, one of my good friends sent me this book, and it's something I do, and I recommend it to anybody. Handwritten thank you cards. Nobody gets a mail that's actually handwritten. And one of the things I always do is when I meet people who I connect with and I want to share something about myself, I send them one of my favorite books. I just sent one of our clients a copy of the book Where Men Win Glory, the Pat Tillman story, one of my favorite books. A very inexpensive way to solidify a relationship with somebody is to send them a book. It's so thoughtful, and then that type of connection is not happening. And one of my best friends is one of the top realtors in the area, and he sent me this journal because he knows I love Ray Dalio, who wrote a book called Principles that I think is very good business reading for everybody. Not everybody's read it, but the journaling experience of the book, it forces you to go through the steps of actually writing down what you stand for. And when you think of most people who are projecting or who are out there, I don't think a lot of them have really taken the time to like ask themselves why they stand for things or what they stand for, or if they're in this situation, what principle is more important to them, right? Fairness or compensation or this or that. And going through this process of writing down, it's just reinforcing to me why I've done things. And it makes me feel emboldened to continue to do the right things. But for founders, I thought when I was talking to you, founders should do this, talk about their principles because they influence their brand with their principles. They build their team, they build their culture, they focus on this element of the product versus that based on their principles. So, I would highly recommend to founders reading the book Principles, but also going through the journal. And we're going to do this from a branding perspective, where we're going to help founders identify their core principles at a deep level, not just at a surface level, because I think that really influences the brand.
You bring up a really good point. I'm just going to pull up what the book was. Okay, so I recently read this book, What You Do Is Who You Are, and it's by Ben Horowitz, and him and Mark Andreessen own that really famous
he's worked
hedge
with,
fund.
he worked with Elon.
Elon, yeah, they're big.
I'm going to look at that book right now.
And the book is effectively just about how important culture is in terms of success. And you bring up such a great point of like really working through this journal, my principles, but that connects to the larger idea of just having principles, because when of all these case studies that I've read, like what makes these businesses and these brands successful is a very true understanding of culture and having company buy-in to that culture. Like that's what attracts, whether it was the IKEA story or the Four Seasons story or the Home Depot story or the Walmart story, like what made these brands great is that there was a higher order purpose that the employees could buy into. Trader Joe's, like these great brands that transcend decades and like we all understand instantly that it's a great brand is because of their culture. And it's easy to say you have principles, but if you don't work through what they actually are and you don't identify them, it's words without meaning. And
we should try to get Ray Dalio on the podcast to talk about, because I actually think there's something really core here nobody's talked about. Because when you read these books retroactively, you can see that the business owners succeeded because they stuck to principles that they knew or didn't know, but I think there's probably a lot of founders out there who had principles, didn't articulate them probably properly, and maybe have wandered off that path and didn't reach the success they could have. So like understanding your principles earlier might make your success quicker.
Or just more realized. I think that's like, yeah, it was really interesting. I was on site for one of our brands a week ago, and like a perfect example of this. You know, the brand grew really quickly, made, you know, tons of millions of dollars. They were really killing it. They had this like built-in community, this like wicked tribe. People really loved this brand, and their sales are down, and they're kind of like, you know, what's going on? And it was like, I kind of looked at it, and it was so simple. I'm like, well, what's changed? And they explained, and like, we're not reposting stories from our customers anymore. And we're not showcasing who buys our products. And they were giving like all these other reasons, like, you know, there's only so much that people can buy from our brand. And I'm like, yeah, or you forgot about who built you guys, you know? And it goes back to like, if those are the original principles that were like that the founder was so focused on, she was like, I was responding to every single DM. I was literally responding to every single message that came in. And I was like, she's like, you know, that took me 3 hours a night. I can't do that anymore. I'm like, well, you can't do that anymore, but like, could you pay someone to do that? I'm like,
or you could delegate something else, because our executive minds think that's below us once we get to a certain level. But if that's the thing that actually matters, like it might be
if that
the
was
best.
the millions of dollars of difference,
And
I
if you
think
kept doing it,
it's worth your time.
yeah.
But it's also, okay, but that's another question though too, is like, oftentimes it's like, it's just cut. Like they just stopped doing it. Like they didn't try bringing in a salaried person at $50,000 that could do two things. Like they don't, it could be customer service and could respond to, like, you can add that to someone's job. And like, it's just, when you think about like really just drilling down on what your principles are and what the time cost is to reignite what your original principles were in a business when you were like a team of two or a team of one. It's easy to have principles when you're a one-person show, but it's hard to execute those principles when you start to scale and grow. So it's such a great exercise.
This is the strategic thinking that's missing just from that scenario. So your company was built and became very valuable because you responded to all your clients just on your computer. Then you get busy. It's like, I'm too busy to do that, as opposed to thinking, if that was the force multiplier that got me to grow, why not use digital to film me responding to my clients?
Yeah.
So then it's now a shareable moment. So now it's got that value because now it's amplified. Now people can actually see what you're doing, right? But that type of thinking is missing in a lot of how we approach marketing strategy. But shout out to Justin for sending me that book. Amazing book. Really value it. And I will send that to a bunch of other people.
And I would love to hear your guys' feedback of what you guys think about this framework, what you like, what you don't like, and continuing, obviously, not just the first one, but if we try this for a few weeks. And
suggestions for hot or not, comments, like, follow,
and let's
subscribe.
get some brand audits in the loop. So get me your brand.